Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of In the Prog Seat. Tonight, we've got, once again, George Lamy, Anthony Farrar, and Chuck Alvarez. Hey, everybody. How's it going?
Hey, Pete.
Right. Everything's well. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. So tonight,
ready for Jean-Luc.
Jean-Luc Ponty. All right. So we've had a lot of people asking for Jean-Luc Ponty over the last bunch of months, and as I found out, we've got a bunch of Jean-Luc Ponty fans here. So I figured, you know what? We're going to just do a ranking our 10 favorite Jean-Luc Ponty albums here on In the Prog Seat. Why not, right? Because Jean-Luc's music, while most people classify it as jazz fusion, man, there's a lot of prog going on in these albums, right? I mean, it's just, this like, you know, there's a lot of those bands that kind of bridge the gap between what we consider jazz fusion or jazz rock and progressive rock. This guy absolutely personifies that, I think. I mean, so much of this music is symphonic prog to my ears. You know, there's of course it's jazzy and all that, but some of the best instrumental music of the last kind of 40 plus years, I think. So I've asked everybody to take a look at his huge catalog of music. There's so many albums that he's put out, and to pick, everybody's going to pick their favorite 10 studio albums and rank them in order of favorites. So I don't know where we started last week. Anthony, you're going to start first today. So we're going to go Anthony, Chuck, George, and me. Anthony, kick us off with your number 10.
All right. When Pete said to do a ranking of top 10 albums of Ponty, when you think about this, they all can be interchangeable, maybe except for maybe like the top 3 or 4, but they're all about interchangeable. On any given day, I could name one and it'd be different tomorrow. So this ranking is not the gospel. So this is what I'm feeling today. All right. So I'm going to start with number 10 ranking. I'm going to start off with Fables, not released in 1985. It's got some 80s undertones to it. The debut of guitar player Scott Henderson. One of my favorite tracks is Infinite Pursuit, and Cattails is another good one. So number 10 is going to be Fables, 1985. Jean-Luc starts us off.
There you go. And I absolutely agree with what you said. My ranking could change tomorrow if we did this again tomorrow, because a lot of these albums are just equally as good, and they're, you know, there's some similarities on a lot of these albums, but the real quality here, I think. So it made this kind of hard. It's like, well, do I put that one before this one? It's like, I don't know. So I just kind of put it down like, all right, I'm going to go with it. But yeah, you're right. The top like 2, 3, or 4 are pretty much set. The rest of them are all just real good quality, but could show up differently any other time. Chuck, what do you got?
Oh man, well, my 10th, just like what everyone else said, just because we have them ranked from 10 to 1, that doesn't necessarily mean that what we have here isn't great. One of the albums that I love, and probably my 10th, my first pick will be Jean-Luc Ponty's Open Mind. Open Mind, very much, once again, 80s vibe to it. Probably some people just might seem that it might be a little bit too 80-ish, but there are a couple of tracks on here that are just absolutely Jean-Luc Ponty-ish smoking. One of my favorite albums from him. This, once again, Jean-Luc Ponty's Open Mind. That's what I have there. I see we have a little prog kitty.
The dog's chasing him.
Save me, Daddy, save me.
All right.
Sorry.
Good choice. That's a good album. I agree. All right, George, what do you got?
All right. About half my titles are part of a French remastered box set from 2011 called Jean-Luc Ponty Electric Fusion, The Atlantic Years, so I won't have anything to show. But my number 10 is Mystical Adventures from 1982.
Excellent.
The material is pretty good. It's kind of the end of the era where I really liked him. My issue with this record is production. This is where it starts to get really cold and sterile sounding, I think, especially the keyboard patches, and even the violin tone has changed from what he had in the 70s. And it really takes it down for me. Also, the sidemen at this point are less impressive, I would say. But it's kind of like a last gasp album, because the ones after it, they don't work for me. But yeah, that's my number 10.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny how you mentioned the personnel on that album, because I think if all those other albums before it didn't happen, we'd probably be thinking that lineup was pretty damn great. But that just goes to show you the kick-ass bands that he had before, like especially in the mid to late 70s. So it's a good point there. All right, my number 10, I'm going to echo Anthony's choice, Fables from 1985, which I don't have a hard copy of. It's to my knowledge, the only album that Scott Henderson appeared on.
Yes.
I think he's kind of underutilized on the album, to be honest with you. But also you got Baron Brown on bass, Rayford Griffith on drums. The album is very dominated by the Prophet and Synclavier synths, which he was using quite a bit at the time. There's lots of violin. You got some occasional guitar, not enough for my money, but I still like it. It's a good album. Infinite Pursuit, it's got that kind of futuristic sound that a lot of his albums of this time period have, but it's upbeat. Elephant's Love, good track. I love Plastic Idols is pretty cool, and Cattails is probably my favorite song on the album, because I think that's got the best Scott Henderson solo on the album, and I think he really kind of rips it up during that song. But I think for me, I think the album is decent, but I would have liked to hear a little more Scott, because I think if you listen to the older albums, he let his guitar players do quite a bit of stuff, whereas in the 80s, you heard less and less guitar, more synths. And that's just the way he was going, and I totally get it. But so that's my number 10. Back to Anthony.
All right. Coming in at number 9, his debut on the Atlantic label after his short stint with Mahavishnu, Upon the Wings of Music, 1975. I have this on an oldies.com label. I don't know. I've never even seen this before, but the title track's very good, and Waving Memories is another track on this that I really enjoy. Of course, as the later albums, get better and better each album he makes. So this was kind of like his start of the fusion in his solo work. So I'm going with number 9, Jean-Luc Ponty, Upon the Wings of Music, 1975, his debut.
Yep, good stuff.
Very good. My number 9 from Jean-Luc Ponty is from 1980, Civilized Evil. Once again, this is probably Jean-Luc Ponty starting to veer towards that late era where everything beforehand was just absolutely astounding. I love the album. The very first track, Degamania, is a pretty good song. It's a pretty good playing on here. But once again, the lineup is not up to par to what he had beforehand, but still pretty stellar album.
And that album cover.
Yes.
Yeah.
Love that album cover.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good album.
It is. It is. All right, George, what do you got?
That's my number 9 as well, Civilized Evil. Pretty much everything Chuck said. It's the mark of the beginning of the 80s for him, and just beginning to show where he was headed with the lesser lineups and the more clinical production. But I'd say about half of it is quality material, so driving.
Yep. All right, cool. My number 9, I'm going to go, if anybody's got one, you can hold it up. If not, it's okay. I don't have a copy of it. Individual Choice from 1983.
Okay, I don't have that on there.
Picture of Jean on the cover, right? Looking all sorts of handsome and whatnot, just kind of chilling out there. To me, this is, I guess you can technically call all of these solo albums because it's Jean-Luc Ponty and his band. But for me, Individual Choice feels like a true solo album. I mean, he's basically playing almost everything on the album. He's playing all sorts of synths, and he's got the violin, obviously, but he's got a small cast of characters who come in and have played just specific solos on specific tracks. So he's got, George Duke plays a solo on one tune. He's got Holdsworth, who plays, I think, solos on 2 songs. Randy Jackson plays bass on a couple tracks. Rayford Griffin plays a little bit of drums. In Spiritual Love is a really good song. Far From the Beaten Paths is another good one. I really like Nostalgia. That's a really cool song. It's got some cool sequencers going on. It's got a pretty ripping Holdsworth solo, which I kind of dig. Title track is a good violin romp, a lot of cool synths, but it's a decent album. It's just for me, it seems to be missing that band feel, which we really got a lot of on albums that came before. But I still think it's pretty enjoyable. So that's my number 9.
Excellent.
All right, number 8. Now, over the years, I always thought Jean-Luc had some cool album covers. Well, this is my number 8. A Taste of Passion. I mean,
that's not one of them.
This is not one of them, no. But it's a cool violin that he's playing on that tour.
Oh, it is.
But 2 of my favorite tracks are the first 2 tracks, Stay With Me and Sunset Drive. And this is kind of where he's veering towards before he gets in the 80s, a little more keyboard than the synclaver, as you mentioned before. But this is another one that I really enjoy. So this is Taste. Oh, it's a Taste for Passion from 1979. So that's my number 8.
He actually has a really good lineup on that album.
Mm-hmm. Yes. What's the Ralph Armstrong is still part of the lineup at that time.
Yep. And 2 guitar players.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, well,
Zavad was a fantastic keyboard player.
Oh, he's awesome.
Sure was. Mm-hmm. Sure is, man. Mm-hmm. Well, Ed, I think that you and I have basically the same thing going on over here. This is also mine as well. This is once again one of those albums that's transitioning towards that 80s vibe. I also again love Stay With Me, one of my favorite songs from him off the album, and also Life Cycles as well. He's still probably like in that late 70s era, but you can still see that he's going towards that 80s vibe. That's my number 8 right there.
Cool. Chuck, I have a couple boots from that tour, and Stay With Me was played quite a bit.
Oh, I love that song.
Yeah, that's a great tune.
Probably one of my top 10 songs from him.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, George, what do you got?
3 in a row. It's my number 8 as well. Taste for Passion. Like they said, it's the last go around for Ralph Armstrong and Alan Zavad. It's pretty close to Civilized Evil, but I'd say it's just a little bit better. Some of the songs are more memorable, especially Sunset Girl. Got the great bass solo from Armstrong. That's maybe if there's anything wrong with it, it's a little less song development than some of the older stuff, but it's a good album. My number 8.
Well, I hate to be the guy to break up the party, but my number 8 is Upon the Wings of Music from 75. Sorry, guys. I like this album. It's a good album. Again, it's very early on here, and you can kind of hear his sound and style really starting to develop. Interestingly enough, you got Ray Parker Jr. on guitars, right? Kind of interesting. I think for me, the MVP of this album, and she appears on another album too, is Patrice Rushen.
Oh, yes.
What a wonderful Fender Rhodes sound she's got. Holy moly. I mean, her playing on this album is absolutely sublime. I just absolutely love. I mean, it's like, I always rave about, Chick Corea and his Fender Rhodes sound. I mean, she's up there, man. It's just great stuff. You got Ralph Armstrong in the band, Leon Chancellor on drums. The album's really short too. What is it, like 33 minutes, something like that?
If that.
Yeah, if that, right? But yeah, a lot of Fender Rhodes, a lot of clavinet. Title track is really good. There's kind of funkiness coming on some of these songs. Now I Know is good. Polyfolk Dance is really good song. Yes. A lot of tasty guitars and synths going on that. Got Armstrong's bass all over this album, which is really good. Waving Memories, another good track. Echoes of the Future. I really like that a lot because that kind of shows a lot of the cool sounds that Ponty would kind of utilize when he's playing violin. That's basically all him right there. And, he just had this otherworldly sound going on, using all these effects and everything, just absolutely like intoxicating stuff. And this is really the beginning when he started doing all that. So, yeah, good album. Number 8, but it's still, I dig it quite a bit.
I think what separates him from like a lot of other musicians is he had his own style. There was nobody else doing out there like him. There was nobody else doing what he was doing.
Yeah, totally.
Jazz violinist, very rare, especially at that time.
And then the band he had comprised it with, I mean, they just sounded fantastic together.
Yeah. absolutely. Regardless of who we had in the band.
Yeah.
Cool. What are we up to? Number 7? Number 7, Anthony.
Yes.
Number 7, the only other one I don't own a physical copy of is Individual Choice, as Pete had said. It's more of an 80s sounding record. He produced it. He's doing a lot of the orchestrations on it. As Pete also said, George, one of my favorite keyboard players, George Duke, makes a guest appearance. But as Pete said, the 2 tracks that Holdsworth does the solos on are just absolute rippers. So my number 7 is going to be Individual Choice, Jean-Luc Ponty, 1983.
Is there anything that guy has played on that has not been great?
Oh.
I mean, geez. Alan Holdsworth.
Oh.
All right. Back to you, Chuck.
My number 7 is from 1978. Cosmic Messenger. This is perhaps his last great album. I know that some critics don't think too highly of it, probably because of the sound recording of it, but there are just so many great songs on this album. I could just list every single one of them as one of those great songs, and I love this album. That's my number 7, Cosmic Messenger. Oh,
yeah.
Oh man,
I don't get any criticism for that at all. That's
man,
a great one. Yeah,
what a great album.
Yep,
from top to bottom.
George, what do you got?
Number 7 is the debut, On the Wings of Music.
Beautiful.
The first of his Atlantic Fusion albums. And like you mentioned, the guitar players, Ray Parker Jr., you didn't say where people might know him from, which is he did the
Ghostbusters.
The other guy, there's another guy on there, I think Dan Sawyer. Between the 2 of them, there's a lack of firepower, I would say. That would be my only beef with the album. Other than that, it fits right in with the rest of his mid to late 70s stuff. So
yeah,
I like it.
Yeah, I think the guitar work is a little on the bluesy and funky side, I think, and it's lacking that that kind of otherworldly style that Holdsworth brought, but yet that real like rock firepower that Daryl Stuermer brought to the table, right? Shortly thereafter. I mean, the guitar work is fine on that album, I think, but yeah, it's not quite the same as what we would hear after, Jamie Glaser and Joaquin Levano or whatever, however he says his name. I mean, those are some serious players, right? Yeah. All right, so my number 7 is going to be Civilized Evil from 1980. So, yeah, I mean, I like this album. It's a little not quite as fiery as the ones that came before it, but like you guys have all said, it's 1980. Musical times are changing. I think Jean-Luc is kind of going with the flow here, and I get it. But he's got a great band here. We got Daryl Stuermer and Joaquin Levano on guitars. No complaints there. Randy Jackson on bass. Yes, the Randy Jackson from, all the music shows and Journey and all that kind of stuff. Chris Ryan on keyboards. He's a good player, but he is no Alan Zavad. I will say that right off the bat.
Totally different.
But Mark Craney on drums, pretty good.
Yeah, six tracks.
Yeah, he's a pretty good.
He was busy that year between that and A.
Yeah, just to tell. Yeah, exactly. So he's a good player. Demogomania. I like that a lot. In Case We Survive, Peace Crusaders is good. Some good guitar on that. Happy Robots is a good kind of funky track. Good Guys, Bad Guys has got some really interesting guitar and violin duets, so to speak. But I dig it. It's a pretty solid album. And that's my number 7.
All right, number 6. His second album, Aurora. The debut of Daryl Stuermer on guitar and ex-bandmate from Uncle Frank's band, Tom Fowler on bass.
Yep.
1976. And 2 of the highlights here are this is where he started to kind of do the suites. The Aurora Suite Part 1 and Part 2. Unbelievable tunes. Great violin. He features Part 2 on his live album that was issued in 1979. It just smokes. Another great one on this is Waking Dream. So Stuermer in the fusion part, he's jamming. I mean, he when he went to Genesis and he had to take over for the God, that was a little bit different. But I think Sturmer fits quite well with the Pawnee band. So my number 6 is Aurora from 1976.
All right, I'm going to throw it out there right now since you kind of started with it. I am going to say one of the biggest injustices of all time is the fact that Genesis did not let Daryl Sturmer be that guy in that band.
Exactly.
Because quite frankly, when Hackett left, they needed another lead player like him, and I think Sturmer should have been that guy. He's got all the talent in the world. I think he's a fantastic player.
Oh, he's a brilliant guitarist.
Nothing against Michael Rutherford at all, but I think that band was missing that guitar force. He would have been that guy. I never understood why they just let him play live, and that's it.
What's interesting though is Rutherford's tone on "And Then There Were Three" is beautiful.
It is really good. Yeah.
That's about the only record that I can say wow, his tone is perfect for that record.
Yeah. But yeah, Sturmer is great in this band, and I especially. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll get
a little ahead of ourselves.
All right, Chuck, what do you got?
All right, my number 6 is King Kong. Jean-Luc Ponty plays the music of Frank Zappa. As you know, that he was part of Frank Zappa's Mothers of Invention during the late 60s, early 70s, and provided some awesome music on there. I actually like most of the stuff that he has on this album over the versions that were on the Frank Zappa version. But so you can see that this was like him going towards that jazz rock genre. Very powerful stuff on here. And as a matter of fact, Frank plays on a couple of tracks on this album as well. Actually, he plays on just one track actually. That's my number 6, King Kong.
Good choice. What a great track too. Oof.
Oh man,
they did not have a good. They had a falling out though.
Yeah,
Jean-Luc, because I guess he said Frank owed him money, and Frank said, "I don't think so." And,
you guys ever see that footage of the mothers with Jean-Luc? Was it from Sweden? I think from 70.
Yeah,
whatever the hell it is. Yeah.
Where Frank's wearing those lovely pants,
those shoes.
Yeah, that's good stuff. All right, George, back to you.
My number 6 is Cosmic Messenger. Probably you nailed it, Chuck, when you said it's the last great album. 2 of my all-time favorite Ponty songs on this one, Don't Let the World Pass You By and Egocentric Molecules. That the best Ralph Armstrong bass solo in that song is turns the octave around and just goes nuts. I mean, it's great. But yeah.
What an ending tune, too.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Great closer. That's a closer on the live album, too, right?
Yes.
So,
yes.
The only album with Peter Maunu on guitar, he ended up in the Arsenio Hall band.
Yes. Made money, though.
Yeah. A lot of it.
That'd be my number 6.
I got to say, that live album is amazing. That's one of those live albums from this period that I think, that I always seem to forget about when you talk about some of the great live albums of the 70s. That is so good.
It's so short.
It's so short. That's a perfect example. I should have brought it up on the Portnoy episode I did.
I was actually going to tell you about that.
Right? I don't know how did I forget that? How did I forget that? It's like that is the epitome of a great live album that should have been a double. That set was not just a handful of songs, right?
And not to get off on the subject, but another one would have been perfect for your show with Portnoy. I was thinking of Joe Walsh's "You Can't Argue with a Sick Mind." That's too short.
That totally is too short. And the James Gang live album too.
I thought you were going to say Mahavishnu.
And that's another one.
Yes.
So I didn't do any stuff. Man, see? Mike, if you're watching, we can do a part 2. Trust me, we can do it. All right. I totally threw us off. Who's next? I don't remember.
You're up, Pete.
I'm up. Okay, all right.
We're at number 5.
5?
No, Pete didn't do it.
This is my number 6.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. So you guys have already talked about this, A Taste for Passion from 1979. I do like this album. Yeah, bad album cover notwithstanding. I like this guitar team of Jamie Glazer and Joaquin Lovano. I think they work really well together. Alan Zavad is spectacular, is always on this album. Stay With Me, Sunset Drive, really good songs. I think you guys mentioned that. Dreamy Eyes, I like quite a bit. Beach Girl is upbeat and fun. Really nice acoustic guitar solos on that as well. Life Cycles has this rampaging guitar solo from Jamie, which he's a really good guitar player. I can't say it enough.
Really is. Mm-hmm.
And then you got Give Us a Chance, which is nice and dreamy with that mesmerizing violin from Jean-Luc. I dig this album, but yeah, they're starting to move into the 80s, and I think maybe not quite the greatness of the albums that came before, but I think this is kind of right, just crossing over into very good as opposed to great. Back to Anthony.
Well, what I think what's great about Pawnee is there's a lot to choose from. I mean, for any jazz fusion enthusiast who likes the violin, electric violin, there's at least one or two that you got to have in your collection, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't sound like anybody else. If you're thinking violin, you're thinking like Sugarcane Harris or something like that. This is nothing like
that. Okay, my number 5 is Civilized Evil from 1980. Another, thankfully, a cool cover with the next record. I think this is a really cool cover. I love the colors and it's very vibrant. Demogomania was a staple on this tour.
Mm-hmm.
Forms of Life was another staple on this tour, really good. And then another great closer, Once in a Blue Planet. And this is where Jamie Glazer's at the helm on guitar. It's just him, and I think he does an outstanding job. So Jean-Luc Ponty, Civilized Evil, 1980, bringing it in the 80s.
Excellent. Mm-hmm. Like I said, there are no bad albums that we're all choosing here, gents. Well, my number 5, we were just talking about it, is Jean-Luc Ponty Live. Oh man, what's that? Once again, I just couldn't believe that this album is as short as it is. With all
but it's so good.
What's the playing on? It's not even 40 minutes, and you listen to this, and it's just unbelievable. Well, everything on here works well live. It's just just one of the great jazz rock albums of the 70s. That's my number 5, Jean-Luc Ponty Live. Every single song on here just absolutely is just astounding.
Mm-hmm. And a great cover for the photo.
Yes. Oh yeah, yep. I will say I didn't include any live albums in my ranking. If I did, that might have been number 1. It's that good.
It's that good.
Yeah, mm-hmm. It is. All right, George, back to you.
My number 5, I semi-cheated. It's a boot. Jean-Luc Ponty, Bottom Line, 76. The reason behind it is because my favorite Ponty drummer ever is Steve Smith. And
how could it not be?
On board at the end of the Imaginary Voyage tour, and then he recorded Enigmatic Ocean. So this is one of a handful of gigs that's out there with him on drums. And the sound and the performances are off the charts. I mean, and it's longer than the official live album, which is always good.
How long is it?
It's about 50 minutes. They do the entire Imaginary Voyage.
Well, you got to read the entire track list, my friend. Come on, give it to
us. Wandering on the Milky Way, Aurora, both parts, The Gardens of Babylon, and then all 4 parts of Imaginary Voyage.
Excellent.
Which is so intense. So that'd be my number 5.
Right.
Nice.
Based on pure spins, I had to have it in there.
Yeah, right. Does that got Sturmer on guitar?
It does, yeah.
Yeah, it's got it right.
Sturmer, Zavad, Tom Fowler, and Smith.
Man, that's got to be smoking. Oh boy! All right, my number 5, Mystical Adventures from 1982. I agree with what George said. I think production-wise, it's not quite up to snuff of some of the other ones, but I still dig it quite a bit. And he's still doing the long suites, which is really cool. I mean, the title suite, Mystical Adventures, is 5 parts, really, really good. Good lineup here. So you got, Chris Ryan on keys, Jamie Glaser, Randy Jackson, Rayford Griffith. We got the guy who shows up everywhere throughout this time period, Paulino DaCosta on percussion. It seemed like every time you turn around, he was on another person's album. But I like the kind of dreamy soundscapes and kind of swirling nature of the arrangements on this album. Title track is great. Final Truth is another good, longish track here. You got Jig is a lot of fun. Got a cool cover of Stevie Wonder's As, which I think is a lot of fun. And Rhythms of Hope is really cool. It's upbeat. I don't know. I dig it. Love the album cover too. In fact, I really love the album cover. It might be one of my favorites from him. But but I like this album. This is, for me, easily his best 80s album. Not even.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, number 4. Mystical Adventures. As Pete said, as you can tell by the cover art, the suite kind of gives you like that dreamy soundscape, and it fits the cover perfectly. And as I said in the prior show, the closer Jig, I got to see where they kind of did a cool version with the Anderson Pawnee band. So Mystical Adventures is part of the medal round. We are in the top 4 now. So 1982, this was, I think it's the first Jean-Luc Ponty album that he produced too. So that's my number 4.
There you go.
Okay, I guess that we're all going to start repeating each other now, because once again, Mystical Adventures is also my number 4. Just absolutely love that suite. That entire suite is just amazing. I played that for a couple of my friends at work, and they just didn't believe that this song actually existed. I was like, this. But as George said, the sound is a little off, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the album itself is not great. That's my number 4, Mystical Adventures.
And Chuck, you can tell your friends at work, it's like, well, if you like that suite, there's a lot more where that came from, right? He's got quite a few more.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
All right, George, what do you got?
My number 4.
Oh, sweet.
Oh, The Rite of Strings.
Mm-hmm. Clark Demiola Ponty.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That it really is.
A one-off from 1994, although they did put out a concert film also. It sounds exactly like what you'd expect. A mix of material from all 3 guys. Ponty contributes Renaissance and Change of Life. I don't know where Change of Life is from, but Renaissance, of course, is from Aurora. It's a great album. If I had my druthers, I'd like to hear a drummer on it, but it sets it apart that it doesn't have one. So
yeah. What year did that come out again? I'm trying to, because I know I bought it as soon as it came out.
It was 92 or 93.
94?
It was 94. Okay.
Yeah. No, I don't believe they played in this market. I don't know if they did any US dates, but I would have gone to see them.
Same here.
Yeah, I remember there was a radio station out of New York City called Q104. Chuck, I don't know if you remember Q104, right?
Yes.
But they played that album a lot when it first came out.
That's when that station was still good.
Yeah, it was. It was, yeah. It just totally went off the deep end, that smooth jazz thing, and they stopped playing like all the good stuff. And I was like, Not long after that, because I was about 95 or so. You weren't, you would be very hard pressed to hear anything good on that station after a certain time. But man, early on, you'd put it on any time of the day. You'd hear the Electric Band. You'd hear, Chuck and Patty. You hear Stanley Jordan and Pat Metheny and Jean-Luc Ponty. I mean, you'd hear all this stuff, and I'd be like, oh, this is like the best ever. And then all of a sudden, it's like, what happened? Playing Randy Crawford all day long, right? It's just like, oh, come on, man. So, all right. I think someone has mentioned this album once already, but Cosmic Messenger from 1978. I love this album.
Mm-hmm.
This is for me one of the greats. And as George mentioned, the only studio album with Joaquin Lovano and Peter Manu. Is that how he says his name?
Manu, I think.
Manu, whatever. Great player, by the way. Alan Zavad is off the charts great on this album. Ralph Armstrong, Casey Sherrill on drums. I love the title track. Man, it's just like so swirling and soaring. Ponty's violin is just off the charts throughout this album. The Art of Happiness, nice and funky. Don't Let the World Pass You By is pretty spacey. Puppets Dance is a pretty guitar-oriented song, which I really dig a lot, but a lot of really cool violin on that as well. Fake Paradise has some killer guitar and violin kind of trade-offs and what have you. Ethereal Mood's another good one. And of course, Egocentric Molecules, which has a smoking guitar solo, might be one of my favorite Jean-Luc Ponty songs ever. If it's not number one, it's definitely number 2 or 3. So that is my number 4.
Excellent.
All right. This may surprise a lot of people, but my number 3 probably his bestseller ever, Enigmatic Ocean. I've seen him 3 times, twice solo, once with once with John Anderson. The 2 times I saw him solo, he pretty much played this in its entirety. What's there to be say about this? The Suite, Mirage is another fantastic tune, and you have Steve Smith on drums, Alan Holdsworth on guitar, Dale Sturman on guitar, Alan Savard on keyboards. What a band would have been. I don't know if how Holdsworth even toured with these guys, knowing the way his history, but his best-selling record, and yes, I have it at number 3. So Enigmatic Ocean, 1977. A story about this is a buddy of mine back in the early 90s, like 93, 94, had gotten this, and he showed it to me. I was like, oh, I got to check this guy out. And I went down, and they didn't have it, and there was something else that I bought instead. So that was not my first Jean-Luc Ponty purchase. I'll show that a little later. So 1977, Enigmatic Ocean.
Excellent.
So, we talked last week briefly about like some of those like top-notch lineups, especially we did a whole fusion show, right, for the most part, fusion instrumental prog, and we talked about that classic RTF lineup, and we talked about the classic Mahavishnu lineup. That lineup on that album has got to be mentioned in that same breath, right? Has to be.
Yeah.
It's just too short-lived.
Yeah, I mean, that's the sad truth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Color Me Surprised, number 3. All right.
3. Mm-hmm. That's surprising as well.
Without giving too much away, right?
It's tough being right, guys.
Still, like I said, our number 10s are still also just amazing.
Yeah, these are all great. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, my number 3 is Imaginary Voyage. What can be said about this album? Once again, the Imaginary Voyage Suite, Gardens of Babylon, Wandering on the Milky Way. These are all just great songs. This is just from that great fruitful period of where he did no wrong. And this is also a good sounding album too.
Oh yeah.
It's a very good sounding album. Everything just sounds perfect on here. Great lineup too. Sturmer once again, Zavad. Oh, Zavad just kills it on there. And Tom Fowler. I wonder why he didn't stay too long with the band. But then we wouldn't have Ralph Armstrong. True.
Mm-hmm. So maybe it all worked out for the best, right?
Excellent. True. Mm-hmm.
Nice. Yeah, we're talking about some absolute classics in this catalog right now. So. What do you got, George?
My number 3 is Aurora.
Okay.
76. These top 3 are next level for me. Scarcely a song that you could even dream of skipping. I mean, Aurora's got Renaissance, which he's still playing to this day. He took it out on the RTF4 tour. And the title track, got to be a top 5 Ponty song, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Which is great. So I'll go with Aurora for number 3.
I'm going to echo you right there. Aurora's number 3 for me too. Yeah, it's a near perfect, or is a perfect album. Great lineup. Man, I got to say again, I know Zavad is the guy we talk about in this band, but man, Patrice Rushen's electric piano, I just love it on this album and the album before it. I really do. It's just so good. But you got some nice fiery guitar work from Sturmer on this. Lost Forest, Between You and Me, the 2-part title track, like George said, is just absolutely amazing. Renaissance is so good. I mean, that's Once Enough is another great track on here. The whole thing, top to bottom, is just absolutely amazing. So that is my number 3. Great album.
All right, we're down to the top two, fellas.
Top twos.
1976, Imaginary Voyage. What hasn't been said? That what hasn't been said that already has been said? You know, the Gardens of Babylon, Wandering on the Milky Way is just like just showcasing his violin skills. It's just so spacey. And then the suite, the suite. All his suites are just like just dreamy and soundscapey and just they just take you on, just takes you away. Really, it's very spacey and so this is my number two, 1976 Imaginary Voyage. And one of the reasons why I just adore this record is Mark Craney on drums. He toured with him, just a fantastic player, fantastic, so effortless, kind of like Gavin Harrison a little bit.
Excellent choice. Well, my number two, is Aurora. What hasn't been said about this particular period of Jean-Luc Ponty? It's just once again, Patrice Rushen just absolutely just kills on this album. Just one of those albums that you can't just listen to once. You just got to listen all over again. Every single song on this album is just absolutely amazing. Oh man, Daryl Stuermer once again just shines on here. Another good sounding album by Jean-Luc Ponty.
That is true. That is true. All right, George, what do you got? Number two. Imaginary Voyage.
He actually had a minor FM hit on here with New Country.
Yes.
Country shred kind of a song. But for me, it's all about the suite. The suite is just an incredible piece of music. Part one is like a over-the-top fusion shred. And part two, a nice vehicle for Ponty and Stuermer solo, or Ponty and Zavod. And part three is kind of sounds like a classical melody, actually. Real melodic. And then part four, Stuermer solos over the outro. So 20 minutes of bliss, basically. I think proggers that haven't checked it out, they might like this album.
Yeah. I would think this one and another one we're going to talk about in a minute, I'm sure, are definitely the two that I think prog rock fans would probably, appreciate the most out of all these. But there's a lot on a lot of these albums I think would go over well with that crowd. Yeah, I mean, Imaginary Voyage is my number two as well. That title suite is just incredible. Nobody's mentioned Tarantula, which is a pretty cool rockin' track on here also. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff on here. And then, man, Alan Zavod. Here's the thing. We probably spent more time on this entire show talking about the bandmates than we have of Ponty himself. But man, this guy has surrounded himself with some top notch. I mean, Zavod is killing it on this album. Just absolutely, and that's the one thing I really love about a lot of these records. It's like, these are Jean-Luc Ponty albums. He's the band leader. He writes most all the material and all that kind of stuff. And it's not like his violin isn't all over every one of these albums, but he lets all the rest of these bandmates shine like in a big way on these 70s albums. And so it's almost like impossible not to talk about everybody else. We know how great Ponty is, and we know how great he is on all these albums, but man, some of these other guys that he's got with him are just absolutely spectacular. But yeah, this is a mandatory album that I think if it wasn't for another album for me, which I'll get to in a minute, this would have easily been my number one. So, except in Anthony's.
I was just thinking of this. The first track, New Country on Imaginary Voyage, would that be kind of like a Dixie Dregs type tune, you think?
Absolutely could be, yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Could pass for it.
All right. Well, my number one's going to be different than all you guys, and that's fine. But I have a lot of nostalgic with this. This is the first Ponty I ever bought, Cosmic Messenger. I have it on disc. I have it on cassette, and I have it on a special super disc LP.
Well, you get another copy or two and you're approaching Chris Allo status, right?
I do have another LP on the regular.
Of course you do.
But, the debut of Ralph Armstrong on bass. This is the first Ponty I ever bought, 1994. A buddy of mine was telling me about Enigmatic, and I went to our local record store. Didn't have that, so I bought this. The first track, Cosmic Messenger, just blew me away. Just that feeling. And of course, Alan Zavad again, another great track on here. Egocentric Molecules is just a smoker closer, but Ethereal Mood, which was a staple of this tour, is just absolutely just so mind-blowing, beautiful, and dreamy. And that's what I loved about Ponty. He wasn't a noodler. A lot of his tunes were just so dreamy and had this atmospheric about them. It just, I would think a lot of proggers would really kind of really enjoy. I really believe that. So, and Puppets Dance and Fake Paradise, there's just something about this. It was the first one I ever bought, so this is what I was leaning towards. It's my number one. Cosmic Messenger, 1978.
Can't argue.
Excellent.
Great album. Can't argue that at all. Geez, well, Chuck, I wonder what you're going to have at number one.
Yeah, I wonder as well. Oh, come on. So we already know that this masterpiece right here, Enigmatic Oceans, just quite possibly, not only is it's his greatest album, it's just probably one of the finest jazz rock albums of all time. There hasn't been much that hasn't been said about this album. What's the praises that just go on with Holdsworth, Sturmer, Zavad, Ralph Armstrong, once again, these great musicians that Jean-Luc Ponty, puts himself out there with, but every single one of them shines on the title track suite. Just an amazing album. I know that we're all going to be talking pretty much about this, but that's my number one, Enigmatic Oceans. What an album.
Yep. Right, George?
Yeah. As good as some of the other ones are, it's no contest for me.
Not even close.
Every facet of it is perfect. The exact right players, the exact songwriting you want, the production, everything about it. You can't improve anything about it. I mean, not one, but two suites. Holdsworth playing out of his mind. This is the only album with Steve Smith. I mean, you're just not going to get any better than this. There's no room to get any better. So, and like you said, it's one of the best fusion albums ever.
Yep. Well, my number one is Storytelling. No, just kidding. I like that album actually, but no.
It's actually a pretty good album.
It is. For 1989, it's pretty damn good. But no, Enigmatic Ocean is my favorite as well. Yeah, I mean, the lineup is spectacular. The playing is great. And, I have to say it because as much as I think Holdsworth playing on this album is like astronomically splendid, Daryl Sturmer is fantastic on this album. And I love how there's kind of that, like this yin and yang here between the two of them, because Sturmer is more of like this coming from this like rock sort of place on this album, whereas Holdsworth is doing his normal Holdsworth thing. He's kind of looping all over the place and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's a nice contrast. Zavad is off the charts here. Steve Smith is so good on this album. I mean, I met Steve Smith and I had a conversation with him. I went to see Vital Transformation once in Boston and I got to hang out with him a little bit afterwards. And I asked him, I was like, so do you miss like doing like the old fusion stuff from the 70s? And, because of course we talked about Journey and all that. And he goes, that's my passion, man. I love the jazz stuff. I loved all that stuff. But, he, the pull from Journey, a couple of years later was too strong. And, that's what he did for many, many years. But this is his love. And I wish he would have stuck around in this band a little bit longer. I wish all these guys would have stuck around a little bit longer. Because if you just imagine if these guys like stayed together, did maybe another album or two, did a couple tours together, we'd be talking about the Jean-Luc Ponty band in the same breath as Mahavishnu and Lifetime and Weather Report and RTF. I mean, there's not a doubt in my mind that we would be doing that.
I'm pretty sure that's the second album Steve Smith was ever on. That's pretty amazing.
Ever? Could be.
Oh, it was. Yeah, that's true.
He's not far out of Berkeley. I think that's where Ponty got him, was out of Berkeley.
Okay. Wow. And he went on to make loads of money with Journey.
A lot. Yeah, a lot. Anyway, there you have it, everybody. Our 10 favorite Jean-Luc Ponty albums. A lot of similarities here, but in all sorts of different orders. And, there's a lot that we didn't get to because obviously he's got like a million albums. But for those of you watching and if you're Jean-Luc Ponty fans, give us your 10 favorites in the comments below. We'll be interested to see like what other folks come up with, but I'm liking my list, but I think, like I said, I could, if you were asking me again next week, it might change around a little bit, but I can't wait to go and re-listen to these again, because I've been listening to these a lot for the last couple days, and I'm ready to go dive right back in again and get the ones that I didn't have on CD and, you know, listen to them for the first time in a while on disc, right? Because I used to have those on cassette, and I re-listen to those on YouTube. But it's not the same listening to stuff on YouTube as just putting them on your system, playing them in the car, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there you have it, everybody. I want to thank the guys here once again for joining me on this very fascinating discussion of Jean-Luc Ponty. So visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube.
All the
damn time.
All the damn time. That is correct. It feels like all the damn time some days. Man, oh, man. So stay tuned next week for another edition of In the Prague Seat. And I'm sure we'll be having these three gentlemen coming back and joining me soon. So till then, be safe, everybody. We'll see you later on. I'm Pete Pardo for Chuck and Anthony and George. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thanks, Pete.